get a little Bridget a finding smile.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on with the program. And we have a special treat tonight. We have an outstanding expert who's going to come up here and do about a 3-minute survey on NAFTA, Haiti, and the Universal Health Care Plan. And I want to present to you Professor Dom DeLuise.
Oh, I need that.
Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, honored guests, Danny DeVito, Fabio, Jack Valenti, Teresa, hey, Bobby, Carmine, hey, Joe, how you doing? It's so nice to be here at NIFTA. Never interfere with another guy's fusilli. At 5:30 this morning, this is hard for you to believe, I understand that. I was jogging this morning, and I passed the president because he stopped for coffee at McDonald's. That's the only reason I passed him, is because I don't have to stop. I have this little barrel around my neck that I have marinara sauce in case I feel faint or something, you know. And then I hurt my knee. This is important, listen to this. I hurt my knee, and the president came up to me, and I said, I need medical attention. And the president said, Hillary. That's right. And he couldn't find her, and I said, have you tried looking in her office? She's using that thing. And I think that's really wonderful. Do you realize that we now have the vice president, Albert Gore, whose real name, by the way, is Alberto Gonzola. He is a closet Italian, nobody knows this. We have a vice president, when he speaks, you understand him, the lovely first lady, when she speaks, intelligent, brilliant, beautiful. Oh, I've just been robbed. She's gorgeous, she's articulate, she's focused, and she's ours. I mean, she's yours. But you share. I think we have a great first lady. I'm so thrilled because what she's going to do for women is going to help my wife a lot. So I'm getting my wife in office. I have to tell you that it's very nice to be here with all these wonderful people. Fabio is the only person I don't get along with because nobody knows this. Fabio and I are twins. No, we don't speak. No, we don't get along at all. We're Siamese twins. We were joined at the hair. And I got the short end of the shaft, you know. Danny DeVito, good friend of mine, it's wonderful. All these wonderful names. I grew up in Brooklyn, and the names I grew up with were Anita Caleo, Dominic Bimbo, Cosmo Infantolino. These were just the Jews in our area. We had a wonderful time. We lived right across the street from a big church, Regina Pacis, and every year they would have our Festa de San Antonio. Our Festa de San Antonio. I got our Festa de San Antonio. It sounds like a rash, don't it? It's the Feast of St. Anthony. And they used to celebrate by taking the Maron across the street. Oh, it's wonderful. And the people would give money. 4 guys would carry this big statue. And the priest would walk on the back, and you'd give him jewelry and money and diamonds, you know, and then he'd give you a picture. I mean, this is a very big occasion for me, if you don't mind. Oh, okay. Danny, come here.
And now the president can join the White House Photographers Association. Two quick announcements in the audience tonight is the American who was our ambassador to Italy for 8 years, and he and his wife are here, Ambassador Max Rabb and his wife Ruth, and we're very happy they're here. And a wonderful young actress who is going to sit on the dais, but when I get home, my wife's going to shoot me because she decided she wanted to sit with her husband out there. Hey, any rate, Laura San Giacomo and her husband Cameron Dye. And finally, this is something quite interesting. Earlier this year, when the last...
Thank you very, very much. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous honor for me to chair the National Italian-American Foundation's annual gala dinner. And it's an even greater honor for me to be at the same head table, surely with all our distinguished honorees, but especially with the President of the United States and our First Lady. President and Mrs. Clinton, on behalf of the National Italian-American Foundation and on behalf of everyone in this room, thank you very sincerely for sharing this evening with us and thereby honoring not only us, but all Italian Americans. And it also gives us an opportunity to thank you, Mr. President, to thank you for selecting such capable citizens of Italian descent, like your Chief Economic Advisor, Laura DeAndrea Tyson, your Ambassador to Italy, Reginald Bartholomew, your Director of the Office of Management and Budget, my former colleague, Leon Panetta, your head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Louis Cinciola Free, and your Chief of Protocol from Buffalo, New York, Ambassador Molly Malanzi Razor. Tonight's gala dinner is a celebration of the positive contributions Italian Americans have made to America and the world. Many call America the great melting pot, and so we are. But we are also a great mosaic, a mosaic where the stars of many nationalities shine brightly. Irish, German, Polish Americans, African, Asian, Hispanic Americans, Jewish and Arab Americans, all Americans, Americans all. But tonight, we of Italian descent focused the brightest light we possibly can on our part of that magnificent mosaic, and particularly on 4 of our own brightest stars. New York's First Lady, Matilda Rafa Cuomo, for her humanitarian activities. Danny DeVito in the arts. Phil Scooter Rizzuto in sports. And Richard Grasso in business and finance. As one of the 29 members in the Italian American delegation in the United States Congress, I've worked closely for many years with the National Italian American Foundation and with its many outstanding leaders, like Frank Stella, the NIAF board chairman, and my friends and former colleagues from the House of Representatives, NIAF's present president, Frank Guerini, and most especially and most fondly, NIAF's father, NIAF's mentor, NIAF's guiding light, former Representative Frank Annunzio. They are among those who have worked hard to make this organization so successful, so influential, and so highly respected. And I'm happy to report tonight, therefore, that financially, tonight's dinner is the most successful dinner in the history of our foundation by far. And of course, we have all of you to thank. Here's Frank Stella has been a vigorous campaigner for the National Italian American Foundation, first as its president, then its vice chairman, and now as its chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce to you the NIAF National Chairman, Frank Stella of Michigan.
Thank you very much, John LaFalge. What a speaker, very dynamic, and a heck of a great chairman. I don't know who's going to follow you next year, John, but I'm sure you're going to be sorely missed, but we're going to depend on you to increase this crowd by at least maybe 1,500. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, Monsignor Hilary Franco, honored awardees, Ambassadors Bianchetti and Bartholomew, distinguished dais guests, trustees and Council of 1,000, friends and guests of the National Italian American Foundation, including about 250 to 300 individuals who came here from Italy and Canada to celebrate with us. I certainly want to welcome you. I certainly want to welcome you to this 18th annual gala dinner on behalf of the officers and the board of directors of the National Italian American Foundation. How honored we are that President and Mrs. Clinton has joined us. We are very grateful to you, Mr. President. We know how busy your schedule was. I heard what you did today, and it would take a person at least another 12 hours to do what you've done today. Thank you very much. For the Foundation, 1993 has been a year of major program activities. The greatest MC in the world has done it for us for many years, Jack Valenti. Jack program-oriented NIAF. Our president has been felt.
And the reform efforts that are underway in Italy hold the promise of an even stronger and more vigorous partner for all Italy's allies. For my part, I look forward to doing Italy's leaders have for our president, starting with Prime Minister Ciampi, is an important asset I will have to work with in this. Thank you very much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's award time. And first, we're going to turn to the field of sports. And maybe with that introduction, we ought to give you the latest in the World Series game. The word I have is that at the top of the seventh, Philadelphia 4, Toronto 5. not over yet. It's now my great, great pleasure to introduce our first honoree this evening, a baseball legend from the New York Yankees. When I was a boy living in Buffalo, New York, I idolized the New York Yankees. For me, there was no other team. Hey. My favorites, Joe DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, Vic Rashi, and of course, Phil Rizzuto. Now, some in the... This is two parts, so maybe I'll just put it here, okay? Yeah. Okay, go get it. Where are you?
All right, thank you, Congressman LaFalce and Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton. I'm so happy and proud that you're here. You give more meaning to this wonderful award that the NIAF has given me. But listen, Congressman, you never give the score of the team that's losing first. You always hear everybody's rooting for the Phillies, and you give them a lift, and then you break their heart. Oh, okay. He says he gave the score of the team that's going to win. But I understand not too many athletes have received this award, and so I know Joe DiMaggio, my teammate and very good friend, received it, and so I'm in pretty good company. And the thing that really gives me a boost is the fact, again, that the President and Mrs. Clinton are here, and I just can't wait to tell White and Seaver what's happened tonight. And let them eat their heart out, because White and Seaver, in case you don't know, used to broadcast with me for many years. President and Mrs. Clinton, for being here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next honoree is another Italian-American success story, also based in New York City. Rather than Yankee Stadium, Wall Street is Richard Grasso's ballpark. And business and finance is his game. Dick Grasso joined the New York Stock Exchange 25 years ago, rising through the ranks to his present position, President of the New York Stock Exchange. Mr. Grasso achieved the presidency of the Big Board, the most important and largest stock exchange in the world, by his hard work and by regularly accepting broader and broader responsibilities, succeeding at each new challenge, and always striving for and achieving excellence. His special abilities, his intelligence, his knowledge, his enthusiasm, ambition, good judgment, and sound instincts have helped make him this great ascent to the presidency of Wall Street. And Dick Grasso's talents have also been on display in his service on the National Italian-American Foundation's Board of Directors. He is one who clearly has not forgotten his roots. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to present, on behalf of NIAF, this Lifetime Achievement Award for Business and Finance to the President of the New York Stock Exchange, Mr. Richard Grasso.
Thank you very much, Congressman LaFalce. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, fellow honorees, distinguished members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored and feel truly privileged to receive this wonderful recognition from the National Italian-American Foundation.
To be included in the company of President and Mrs. Clinton, and to have three such extraordinary honorees makes this, for me, an evening I shall never forget. Mrs. Cuomo, the First Lady of my home state, who has worked tirelessly for so many good causes, most critically, aid to children and improving the quality of education in our state. Danny DeVito, who in a short time has thrilled millions.
Handed me a note and he says, John, he says, get it right. He says, get the right team on top. We're going into the bottom of the seventh. Philadelphia 6, Toronto 5. Next honoree, Matilda Cuomo. In any award ceremony, words of praise flow very easily, and exaggerating someone's accomplishments is sometimes expected and usually forgiven. But in the case of this year's recipient of NIAF's Lifetime Achievement Award for Humanitarianism, the usual words and descriptives are, if anything, much too limiting. Because Matilda Cuomo is tremendously proud of her Italian heritage. It is not without accident that her state and to our nation, the First Lady of New York, Matilda Cuomo.
Thank you so much. Oh boy, I know how Phil Rizzuto felt. Thank you, Congressman LaFalce. John, you know that you represent a great part of the family of New York. For Congressman John LaFalce, he is so good, so good. President and Mrs. Clinton, distinguished honorees, ladies and gentlemen. You know, as I sit here, as we all feel up here on the dais, as we look out at all of you, our Italian friends would say, "Che maraviglia!" How magnificent you look. Every part of this evening is exhilarating and memorable for me. To be in the company of our marvelous president and our remarkable First Lady is by itself an exceptional honor and a delight.
Up to now, ladies and gentlemen, you may have the impression that with a New York chairman of tonight's events and 3 awardees from the great state of New York, it was going to be an exclusive New York night. Well, we thought we'd deviate just a little bit and go to a neighboring state for a change. Our next awardee is from the great state of New Jersey. No. I'm not finished. There's just a few more. There's a few more here because there's one thing I have to tell about Danny. Sit down, Danny. Sit down. This is, you know, we had this photo opportunity all planned, you see. We all know Danny DeVito's great movies. We know his great TV programs. I think, though, what would have been our... Ladies and gentlemen, Danny DeVito!
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm telling you. What a night. What a night. That was great. Boy, am I glad they showed up. Before I begin gushing gratitude, I'd like to say that I'm proud to receive this wonderful award, especially this year, because I believe we've got the right guy in that seat over there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that our principal speaker this evening is going to be the President of the United States. But we are also graced tonight by the presence of his wife, our nation's First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton. The world got quite a view of Hillary Rodham Clinton when she testified before and dazzled members of Congress, beginning her health care reform testimony by saying, "I am here as a mother."
Thank you very much, Congressman LaFalce. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, fellow honorees, distinguished members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored and feel truly privileged to receive this wonderful recognition from the National Italian-American Foundation. To be included in the company of President and Mrs. Clinton, and to have
The South. Like you, Bill.
First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton. The world got quite a view of Hillary Rodham Clinton when she testified before and dazzled members of Congress, beginning her health care reform testimony by saying, "I am here as a mother, a wife, a daughter, a woman. I'm here as an American citizen concerned about the health of her family and the health of her nation." Hillary Rodham Clinton made quite an impression on Capitol Hill, an impression like no other person, male or female, because no other person, male or female, had ever shown such a comprehensive grasp and mastery of such a complex subject. Indeed, I don't think we would have had much hope for health care reform without her and without this president, of whom the former Surgeon General of the United States, C. Everett Koop, a Reagan-Bush appointee, recently said, President Clinton has done more in his few months as president to advance the cause of health care reform than all 4 other living presidents combined. But, Mr. President, remember what we said about Matilda and Mario. Behind every great man, there's a greater woman. The best thing you ever did was appoint Hillary Rodham Clinton to be chair of your health care task force. There are about 250 million people in the United States. I don't think he could have picked a better person. I first met Mrs. Clinton in Weston, New York in the summer of '92. I was tremendously impressed with her professionally, impressed with her intellect, her articulateness, and also her obvious passion for children. And since then, I've had the pleasure of working closely with her on health care reform and have come to know her personally. And my respect for her professionally has now been joined with a personal admiration and fondness and friendship. And my view of Hillary the person has become much clearer. She is more than intelligent, more than knowledgeable, more than articulate. She is a very caring, a very kind, a very considerate, a very compassionate human being. Hillary, the world has come to admire and love you. That is especially true of those in this room tonight. We would especially love it if you would grace us by saying a few words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those kind words, John. I was only hoping a little bit that you would also call my name in the middle of your introduction and I would get up and you would finish and I'd have to sit on somebody's lap, you know. But that didn't happen, so here I am. I want to thank John for many things, but most of all because as chair of the Small Business Committee in the House of Representatives, he has understood from the very beginning of this health care reform effort that health care reform will be good for business and particularly good for small business. And I think that kind of understanding of how the health care market currently works and what we need to do to change it has given him a particularly important role of leadership as we move forward in the next months. I'm also pleased to just have been here, to have heard what every one of the honorees said this evening. Especially, I was pleased to have a chance to see my friend Matilda Cuomo honored. She is everything and more that was said about her tonight. I was with her. I was with her at a clinic in the South Bronx about 2 weeks ago, where we went to what is the poorest congressional district in America. And she and I talked with mothers and their children who for the first time were getting adequate health care because there was a system in place where they could find people who were there for them, whereas before they had wandered, usually ending up in the emergency room and not knowing what to do next. And I was also pleased to have been here to see a great shortstop, the head of the stock exchange, and also a great artist honored as well. This has been a very special night for me and for the President. We are particularly pleased by the work that NIAF has done in so many areas, but to try to always remind each of us about the kind of pride we should take in who we are and where we come from, and that we should take that pride and not use it falsely or not use it arrogantly, but use it to build others up as well. Use it to create hope and opportunity. Use it to make good to those who came before us by committing ourselves to those who come after. That's what I see as I look around this dais and this room. And I am just so pleased that you are there not just for the Italian-American community, but you are there for the American community, a community that will need all we can give to it in the years to come to make it what we know it should be. Thank you all very much.
You know, during the course of the campaign, I remember then candidate Clinton saying, if you elect me, you also get Hillary. We didn't really know what he meant until now. Finally, we come to our second representative this evening from the great state of New Jersey, a dear friend and colleague of mine in the Congress for 14 years. As many of you know, Frank Guarini represented New Jersey's 14th Congressional District until his retirement after the last Congress. So this is my first year in a long time without seeing Frank almost daily on the floor of the House of Representatives. I sincerely miss his good counsel, his great sense of humor. However, retiring from Congress gave him more time to devote to an organization he treasures, the National Italian-American Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, to greet you, but also to introduce the President of the United States, I fondly present a treasured friend, the Congressman who became President, the President of NIAF, the Honorable Frank Guarini.
Sounds like a great term to call the President, doesn't it, Mr. President? This has been a very warm and beautiful evening, and I have a distinct pleasure. Mr. President, our First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, honorees, distinguished guests and friends, 9 months and 3 days ago, Bill Clinton became our nation's 42nd president. He became the first president to be born after World War II. He has been described by the National Journal as being the most successful politician of his generation. As president, Bill Clinton has been courageous, committed, concerned, and compassionate. He has directly confronted every challenge put before him. His achievements to date have been significant. He produced the largest deficit reduction package in our history. He helped secure a historic peace agreement between Israel and the PLO. He spearheaded passage of the national service legislation. Yet, in the minds of millions in this country, what distinguishes President Clinton is his commitment to health care reform. The President and the First Lady deserve the gratitude of an entire nation for raising our collective consciousness about the need to make real reforms in our health care system. And we thank you for that, Mr. President, and our First Lady. We are honored once again by your presence at our dinner, Mr. President. We commend you for the appointment of more than 30 highly qualified Italian Americans to your administration. They are led by the distinguished director of OMB, my good friend who I worked with on the Budget Committee, Leon Panetta, who is here tonight, and the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Dr. Laura Drandeyer-Trison. We also appreciate the access and regular dialogue NIAF has had with your administration. Of the 20 million Italian Americans, or according to Frank Stella, 32 million Italian Americans, depending upon how you count them, because the Italian Americans are the most marrying out group that there is, so you can see we're going to be spread now faster than anyone else. There are many talented and energetic professionals who can make a great contribution to the public service of our nation. They are professionals who can help build a better America because of their sense of purpose, family values, and culture. They are ready to join with you in your quest for change and in developing a new generation of leadership for our nation. We recall one passage from your memorable inaugural address when you said, Mr. President, "We must do what America does best, offer more opportunity to all, and demand more responsibility from all. It is time to break the bad habit of expecting something for nothing from our government or from each other. Let us all take more responsibility, not only for ourselves and our families, but for our communities and for our country." These words have been the guiding principles of your administration during your first year, and the American people are responding. It gives me great pleasure and privilege and honor to present to you the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, President Guarini, Foundation Chair Stella, Director Rotondaro, my friend Art Gagliarza, my good friend Congressman John LaFalce, who wanted Hillary to speak tonight. I'm going to tell this on her and John. You know, John was reported in the paper saying, I know I shouldn't say this, but every time I see Hillary, I just want to hug her. So we came here tonight so he could do it in front of 3,000 people. And it would seem perfectly legitimate. Mr. Ambassador, I thank you for your eloquent remarks, and I hope you will tell the Prime Minister that I value his friendship and the friendship of your nation. I know there are about 300 of your countrymen and women here tonight. I thank them for their presence, and I look forward to going to Italy next year to the G7 meeting. Hillary and I went there in 1987. It was one of the best trips we have ever made as private citizens, and I dare say we won't have a chance to do quite as many things next time as we did then. You know, I was really looking forward to this tonight. I mean, last year when I came, I was as nervous as a cat in a tree. It was close to the election. I had no idea if I was going to win. They put me up against Barbara Bush, who had an 86% approval rating. I knew at least half the people here weren't going to vote for me anyway. And all I could do was think about how awful it'd be if I messed up. So I thought, tonight will be a gem. I'll show up as president. It'll be wonderful. First thing I have to do is take a picture of Dom DeLuise and Danny DeVito. I'm about 6 seats from Gina Lollobrigida, and DeVito sits in my lap. I mean, this whole thing has been incredibly humbling. I'm kind of getting used to it, you know. I mean, look at this. Al Gore gets to go on David Letterman. Hillary speaks to the Congress, and a poll taken in bad taste by USA Today says that after she addresses the Congress for 3 days, virtually without notes, 40% of the American people are convinced she's smarter than I am. I frankly don't know how the other 60% missed it. But it was... It was so bad the other day, I was being so humble, I went to California seeking respite. And when I got there, I thought, well, at least here, you know, they said I would go to L.A. and I would stay in the Beverly Hilton Hotel, and I knew it was kind of a jazzy place, and Merv Griffin owned it, and I thought, well, I'll get there, and Merv Griffin will come shake hands with me, and they'll take me up and put me in some gorgeous suite, and I'll feel like the president again. This is a true story. Now, I'm not making any of this up. I show up, and Merv Griffin is there, and he shakes hands with me. He says he's got a gorgeous suite, and I'll feel like the president. But he said, before you get on the elevator, I want you to know that I've been following your activities very closely, and I put you on a floor which does have one permanent resident, and I thought it was a place that would really fit for you. And I get really excited, you know, I'm in Hollywood. I mean, my mind's going crazy. And I get on the elevator. I go up to the whatever floor it was. The elevator opens, and there, standing there to welcome me, as God is my witness, is Rodney Dangerfield. who gives me a dozen roses with a card that says, "and a little respect." Well, anyway, there are a few good things happening tonight. I mean, Justice Scalia is to my left. And I'm about to have a victory that is the equivalent of Ronald Reagan's successful invasion of Grenada, because Jack Valenti picked a fight with Janet Reno. I don't think they know about that, Jack. Yes, you did. But you'll do well. I want to say just a few words. We've been here a long time, and you've all had a wonderful time, and I have been deeply moved by this, as I was last year. But I want to thank the honorees for what they said and who they are, because every one of them reminded us in a different way of why we should be grateful to be Americans and why we should be grateful for the contribution of Italian Americans. I want to thank Richard Grasso and Phil Rizzuto and my good friend and supporter, Danny DeVito, who shouldn't have been so shameless in expressing that, but I loved it. I want to thank our dear friend, Matilda Cuomo, for everything she has been and done. I want to say to all of you, you made me really proud just to be here tonight as a citizen of this country. Proud of what our country has been to you and to so many millions of people like you. Most of the Italian Americans in my administration have been mentioned: Leon Panetta and Laura DeAndrea Tyson. Matilda mentioned her wonderful son, Andrew, who has done a terrific job for us at HUD. We have a lot of other folks here tonight who are in the administration, and I won't mention them all, but I do think that I should say that I have decided to name my good friend Geraldine Ferraro as a permanent member to the UN Commission on Human Rights. This administration cares a lot about human rights, and so does she, and she will be terrific. I also would like to thank a person that in a few days I will formally name the executive director of the White House Conference on Aging, someone a few of you may know, Bob Blancato. I must say, I may be reaching the limit of the number of Italians I can have in my administration. I don't know if there's a de facto quota. I do know that when I flew out to Denver to see the Pope recently, I tried to gather up every Catholic on my staff. So I asked the Pope, I said, "Your Holiness, may I introduce you to all the Catholics on my staff?" And he said, "Yes." And he practically got arthritis of the elbow, shaking hands with them all. And he looked at me and said, "Have you no Protestants and Jews for me to convert?" You know, it's funny to me how much one of you Danny made a joke about being from the south of Italy and not being much different from being from the south. I don't know that that's quite right, but there is something to be said for the common experiences that those of us who grew up in relatively modest circumstances in small towns in the rural South and Italian immigrants who came here. I must tell you, when I travel this great land, I never feel any more at home than I do in South Philadelphia or the north end of Boston. And the other day when Hillary and I went back to New Haven for our 20th law school reunion at Yale, I was so thrilled when we drove through those Italian neighborhoods in East Haven and all the people were still out there. This is 1993, folks, waving their American flags. Not because of me, but because the president was there. Not me, the institution, the office, the nation. It was wonderful. And when they asked me what I wanted to do, while I was in New Haven. I said, well, I'm glad I'm going back to Yale, but I want you to call Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro and take me down to the neighborhoods again where I really feel at home. And I went down to see hundreds of people who have the stories that we heard tonight. I say that to you because I want to make just one serious point briefly that embraces all the issues that I have sought to deal with. In my life, when I was a child, when I was born, almost half the people in my state lived below the poverty line. Now, whatever that means, almost all the Italian immigrants at one time in this country, when they first came here, were by definition below the poverty line. But when I was a child, we all knew. When I was being raised by my grandfather, who had a fourth grade education, and all the people that moved to town was 6,000 people, still had a little plot of land out in the country to grow vegetables on. And all the little children could still be taught to farm, even if they weren't going to be farmers anymore. No one doubted that they were loved, that they were part of a coherent family and community, and that if they worked hard and played by the rules, they would do okay. The same is true. I have heard Mario Cuomo talk about his father, his family. I wept like you did when Danny DeVito told that story. Every one of you in this audience probably has a story like that. There was a structure of support, of love and discipline, rooted in some pretty basic ideas. Family, work, how you do in life depends more on effort and what kind of person you are than IQ and income. Just basic things. You ask me what is wrong with this country today, I'll tell you what. Millions of people don't think it works that way anymore, and for millions of people, it does not work that way anymore. We have a whole generation of children growing up who will not be able to tell these stories, who shoot each other on the street, who have access to guns in a way they would not have access in any other country in the world. We say we're a law and order country. We're the most religious big country in the entire world by far, and we're the only ones that let teenagers be better armed than police, who have no structure, order in their lives, who have no identity with the future, who impulsively do things that destroy others and themselves. When I was governor of my state, I kept a little picture on my wall. I looked at it every day. When I was 6 years old, laying on my back with a broken leg above the knee at a time when they couldn't even figure out how to put a cast on it, so I had a steel pin put through my ankle and my leg was hung up. And I'm there holding hands with my great-grandfather, who lived out in the country in a house built up on stilts, hardly ever got out of overalls, and had no education at all. But he worked hard, he loved me, he did his job, and it worked, whatever it was in our family, it worked. There are millions of people in this country today who will never eat. You ask me what is amiss in this country today? Well, there are a lot of changes we have to make, but we're going to make them. We're going to adjust the global economy. You see, the Prime Minister of Germany said the other day, said, America has got it. They're working. They're going to be productive. They're going to grow again. But it won't work unless the dream that brought your families here is rekindled. Unless our diversity, our religious and racial diversity, becomes a strength again, not a weakness. And unless we can figure out a way to bring all those other kids back into the life that we take for granted so the future has a claim on them, just as it did on all of us when we were growing up. So I ask you tonight, when you go home, think of how Matilda Cuomo's family felt the first time they heard her give a speech. Think of what Phil Rizzuto's family felt like the first time he put on a Yankee uniform. Think of what Mr. Grasso's family felt like when they thought, my God, he's the head of the most important financial exchange in the entire world. Think of what Danny DeVito's relatives felt like when he made it in Hollywood. Think about that. And think about what together we can do to make the children of this country have those feelings. God bless you, and good night.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for those inspiring words. As chairman of the National Italian American Foundation, let me say that you did far more tonight than honor us with yours and Mrs. Clinton's presence. You both talked about things that we love and issues that we care about. We know the challenges you face in the future are daunting. However, you have been unafraid to confront any and all challenges. It is that degree of leadership that has impressed so many Americans. We urge you to continue this direction, tackle the hard problems, offer realistic solutions. Above all, keep our nation focused on the needs that we have to do better and to be better. We also want to thank you kindly and sincerely for your announcing the appointment of two of our own members of our foundation, Geraldine Ferraro and Bob Blancato, to important positions in your administration. And recently appointing one of our own board members, Lee Iacocca, to sell NAFTA. We're proud of you, Mr. President. God bless you and Mrs. Clinton.
Before we give the benediction, 2 or 3 minutes. First, I think that I speak on behalf of everybody in this room. Mr. President, your words were like a twanging wire that goes through a society. I think all of us are going to leave here tonight saying, thank God Bill Clinton is President of the United States. I'd like to come to the microphone now for the benediction. Monsignor Hilary Franco.
Almighty God, we praise you for the richness of all your gifts. We thank you for the company we have shared and the food of which we have partaken. We bless you, Lord of all peoples and nations. O Lord, you created a world which was perfect. God saw all he had made, and indeed it was very good. Somehow it happened that the world we live in today is not certainly the epitome of perfection. War is still raging not far from here. Millions of people going hungry around the globe. Basic human rights denied. We certainly need a change. I read in the scriptures, my ways are not your ways. We pray tonight for the young people in this assembly, especially for our young president. The young men and women that we see here tonight are the hope and the future of the world we live in. Teach them, O Lord, how to interpret your ways. Teach them to start again, to give life to a new beginning. Hear us, we pray. Grant your grace and blessing upon the company we shared, the food we enjoyed. Keep in your heart this evening those who have little or nothing. In faithful and loving service to you, we may share what we have with those who have not, so that one day we may hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. What you have done to the least, you have done to me." Amen.